Today we have a very special video for you where we are going to take you on a driving tour through Fort Pickens here in Pensacola, Florida. Stay tuned. What is going on? It is Andrew and
AJ.
And we're with the Emerald Group right here on the beautiful Emerald Coast. And we are doing videos everywhere from Pensacola to Panama City Beach and everything in between. So if that sounds like something you are interested in, we've got a beautiful subscribe button that we have convinced YouTube to put in there for you. All you have to do is click on that. And if you want to be notified when we do the videos and not just a subscriber, but you actually want to know when we're doing one, then go ahead and hit that little bell that follows it and you'll be notified every single time we do a new video.
We've been getting calls, texts, emails, and Facebook messages, and we absolutely love it. So if you have any questions about the area, please know we are agents first and foremost, real estate agents at that, not federal agents. And we love hearing from you guys. It's like we're hearing from friends every time you guys call. We absolutely love working with you guys. So please don't hesitate. Don't be intimidated. We're people just like you guys, and we want you to call. So all of our contact information is on the screen. Go ahead and use it, and we'll talk with you soon. But for now, let's talk about and show them Fort Pickens.
Yeah, so nice little driving tour through Fort Pickens. We're going to go and throw that up on the screen now. Then we're just going to kind of casually talk to you guys about some of the stuff we know about Fort Pickens and the local area, just to give you something to listen to on this beautiful, beautiful drive.
Okay, so Fort Pickens is actually a military fort on the Santa Rosa Island in the Pensacola, Florida area, and it's named after the American Revolutionary War hero, Andrew Pickens.
It was actually completed in 1834, for those of you that like the history on things, and it was one of the very few forts named in the South that remained in Union hands throughout the entire American Civil War, and it remained in use until 1947, believe it or not, so well over 100 years, 113 years. If my math is correct, and it is included with the Gulf Island National Seashore, and it's administered as a National Park Service.
Something that's really cool about it is that it's actually in the shape of a pentagon, and I just like shapes, so to me that's kind of cool.
It's a very interesting thing to like, AJ. Just really like shapes.
I think it's cool when things are put into specific shapes as opposed to just like, oh well, here's this amoeba or whatever.
Yeah.
No, here's something that actually, like, if you look at it from an aerial view, it's like the Pentagon,
which has a very strategic advantage militaristically, I guess technically. And if you're obviously you guys are watching here, you're not seeing the fort yet. It does take a little bit of time to drive out there, so for the time being, you're just going to get a little history lesson and some beautiful beach footage.
This fort was actually created after the War of 1812, whenever the U.S. decided that we were gonna fortify all our major ports. There was this French engineer, Simon Bernard, and he was the one who was in charge of designing Fort Pickens. And the construction went on from 1829 to 1834 with 21.5 million bricks.
Holy cow.
I know. How did they count those? Does that account for the ones that broke? I mean, I would not want to have been in charge of counting the bricks used to build this place.
Oh, thank you.
So the construction was supervised by Colonel Chase of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. During the American Civil War, he sided with the Confederacy and was appointed to command of Florida's troops.
So the main, reason for Fort Pickens in general was to defend the Pensacola harbor, okay? So there were actually three other forts, things that were kind of supplementing that defense, and that was Fort Barrancas, Fort McRae, and the Navy Yard. So this one in particular, obviously, where we're at now, is located on the western tip of the Santa Rosa Island, just offshore from the mainland. So it's on the barrier island, right? So you guys have heard us talk about this before. before, this is where Navarre Beach is. It's the same one. It's the same where Okaloosa Island is. This is all that same barrier island. So Fort Pickens guarded the island and the entrance of the harbor, which was its main intention.
Now, not so historical is this is a state park now. So if you're a veteran, all you have to do is show that you're a veteran. You can use your DD-214. You can use like the veteran symbol on your driver's license and supply that to the guard at the gate there, and they will hand you a little pass and you can get free access.
And if you've got a VA card, for those of you guys that may have not done 20 years, but you are VA eligible or VA healthcare eligible, whatever, bring that with you as well. That's what got me in and got us in for free, so we didn't have to pay the $5 or whatever it is to get in.
So I know you kind of picked on me a little bit for, nerding out a little over the fact that it's in, a specific shape, but there was actually a reason for that. So they did that with a broader and western wall to provide a wide range of fire over the bay. See, shapes have purpose. Yeah,
which is part of the reason why whenever you go to Fort Pickens, you'll notice the large cannons and stuff at each of the main corners so that they can defend the entire area. So whether you were coming in through the Sound to try to get into one of the harbors nearby, or if you were in the actual Gulf trying to get into this area, you could defend it from all points.
So I don't know if you guys know this word or not, but a counterscarp is like a side of a moat or a ditch. And I had to learn this word because it was talked about for Fort Pickens. So now you know what a counterscarp is, and you need to know that because the fort had one on the east side exclusively, and this was to create a defensive moat just in case there was ever a land invasion that came from the west. So kind of cool, learned a new word and some more history.
Which I guess makes sense because if you want to get through this area and this big fort's here stopping you, you might want to take it over by land, and that helped protect the people that are inside of it. That's actually really cool.
Mm-hmm. And the westernmost bastions were equipped with mine chambers that could be detonated in a last-ditch effort to save them from invaders. Yeah, mines.
Talk about a bad day when you have to do that.
Seriously.
I guess a bad day would just be getting invaded in general. All right, so for those of you that are understanding the timeline, obviously, the American Civil War was going on during a good portion of this. Fort Pickens had not been occupied since shortly after the Mexican-American War prior to that. Right, so despite its dilapidated condition, one of the lieutenants, I think it was Adam Slummer, was in charge of the United States forces at Fort Barrancas. Remember one of those forts that I said nearby? He decided that Fort Pickens was actually the most defensible post in the entire area. So he decided to abandon Fort Barrancas around midnight or so in 1861 on January 8th. His guards repelled a group of local civilians who intended to occupy the fort. So kind of funny that a good portion of it, or some of the first shots fired during the Civil War, was actually a group of civilians and not actually a military force, which is super interesting to me. And a couple of days later, Florida declared its secession from the Union, and Lieutenant Slemmer destroyed over 20,000 pounds of gunpowder at Fort McRae. He then spiked the guns at Fort Barrancas and moved his small force of 51 soldiers and 30 sailors to Fort Pickens. And about 5 days after that, and again a couple of days after that, Lieutenant Slemmer refused surrender demands from Colonel William Henry Chase of the Florida Militia. Chase had designed and constructed the fort as a captain in the U.S. Army Air Corps of Engineers, and Slemmer defended the fort against the threat of attack until it was reinforced and relieved in April 11th of the same year. So about 3 months there by Colonel Harvey Brown and the USS Brooklyn. And then the Confederates attacked the fort on October 9th, so I don't know, what's that, roughly 6 months later, 1861, in the Battle of the Santa Rosa Island with a force of 1,000 men. The attack came from the east, and after forces had landed 4 miles away, the attack was repelled by artillery and gunfire, and the Confederates retreated with 90 casualties.
So after those tensions in Pensacola grew and the Confederates secured the posts at Fort McRae and Fort Barrancas, the Federal forces decided to shell the Confederate forts. On November 22nd, 2 Union warships, the Niagara and the Richmond, sailed into the bay and the bombardment began. The attack lasted for 2 days and the results were in the Union's favor. So Fort McRae was nearly destroyed and the town of Warrenton and the Navy Yard were destroyed. There was a second bombardment that was meant to finish off the Confederates, and that was initiated on New Year's Day in 1862. Fort McRae was almost completely destroyed, and any buildings near Fort Barrancas were completely burned.
Jeez.
Yeah. Since the Confederates were running low on supplies and dwindling in morale, they began to doubt their chances of being able to succeed or to win the Battle of Pensacola. And so eventually the Battle of Mobile Bay drew the last of the Southern forces westward to Alabama to defend against Admiral Farragut's invasion forces. And on May 10th in 1862, the last Confederates at Pensacola surrendered to Fort Pickens. Despite all the continued Confederate threats, Fort Pickens was the only one of 4 Southern forts that remained in Union hands throughout the war. The others were Fort Taylor at Key West, Florida, Fort Jefferson at Garden Key, Florida, and in the Dry Tortugas, and Fort Monroe in Virginia.
Hopefully that little history lesson was helpful for you guys. We just didn't want to have you have boring video with just a little bit of sound in the background, so we wanted to give you a little history. If you guys go to the fort, obviously you see in the video we did not go inside of the fort. We didn't want to show any footage of that. We want to kind of leave a little bit of that to you guys. For those of you guys that are interested in that, go to it. It is super, super cool out there. Very nice piece of history that was a pinnacle point in a lot of America's history in general. So very cool. I hope you guys appreciated it.
If you have any questions about the area, go ahead and give us a call. You have all our contact information still. And if you're still with us, go ahead and comment down below with your favorite part of the video, whether it was, the drive to Fort Pickens or getting to see some of the actual fort or
when we finally stopped talking. Just kidding.
But probably not kidding.
We'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye.